The views expressed and the opinions given by their guests do not necessarily reflect those of the Odyssey Files hosts, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
This is Susan Slaughter from Paranormal Caught on Camera, introducing you to the most epic show ever, the Odyssey Files with David Soyering and Michael O'Neill. You're welcome. Pew, 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 pew.
Oh!
Kim, what are you doing?
Well, I'm telling Mike and Dave, it's time to get on the show.
Oh, well, the Odyssey Files starts now.
Good evening, paranormal community. It is 7 o'clock, which means you are listening to the Odyssey Files here on our Facebook page and wherever you get your streaming platforms if you're not watching us live. So I am your host, Michael O'Neill. With me, as always, are my co-hosts, Mr. David Soyering and Ms. Lauren Infante. How you doing, guys?
Wonderful.
Yeah, doing good.
Good.
Little snow today.
Yes.
Little, maybe hopefully like end of season, like a last hurrah type of snow. A little light snow. It wasn't bad. It was pretty.
I felt no hurrah in it.
No,
so
I probably
don't know
not.
where,
Yeah.
I don't know where you're getting that from.
Well, I woke up this morning and that like the trees, which have been, ugly and dark and gray and bare, had like snow sitting on them today. So it was actually kind of photogenic. So.
Oh, well.
You had to drive in it. I didn't. So.
Yes. So yay you, Dave. You got to see snow-covered trees.
I did. It was a good start to the morning.
Yeah, whatever. Anyways.
Wow, look at you, Mr. Crab Ass.
Just saying.
Way to rain on my parade, man.
Yes, because that is a parade that needs to be rained on. So
Yeah,
I'm sorry to say.
All right.
Anyways, so yes, hopefully it that is the last hurrah. I think it's supposed to be in the 50s tomorrow, which I'm very much looking forward to. I did wear my shants today, which some people had some comments on it. Now, for those of you who don't know what shants are,
I have absolutely no idea. It sounds like
Yeah,
you
please
shit
explain.
your pants. It sounds like shitty pants, and you made a new term that says shants. Like
I made a new term because the uniform shorts that I was given go down past my knees. So it's literally like 6 inches of my calf muscle, and that's it. So they're half pants, half shorts. So I call them shants because that sounds funny. As I get crickets. So okay, it's funny to me, and that's all that matters.
I'm raining on your parade in repercussion of my snow tree story.
Well, you failed.
So. No, I did well because it was crickets. So
whatever. Lauren just didn't know how to react.
I was very confused.
She was definitely with me. That's why you heard crickets.
She was just confused. That's all.
I was confused, but leaning towards what Dave said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
That was the first thing that came to mind.
Okay, moving on. So, all right. So, got some good news, obviously. Not only do we have a great show for you all tonight, the great Kristen Luman from Ghost Mine and A&E's Ghost Hunters will be joining us. For those of you who do not know, she is actually a licensed hypnotherapist in her, I don't want to say in her free time because that is her actual profession.
Right.
It's not a hobby, but so she will be joining us to talk about regression therapy and kind of focusing on how it's used in like alien abduction cases and stuff like that. And then I'm sure we'll go all over the place after that. But She will be here at the bottom of the hour, right around 7:30 our time. So there will not be any commercial break today. For
Yay!
What do you mean, yay? Those are amazing promos.
They are.
that
I know they
played.
are amazing. I know. And the biggest thing is we're not going to be doing stories tonight.
That is correct.
Because usually the first hour, obviously, you listen to us talk about what we find that is interesting in the paranormal question world.
No, Dave, no.
What
they do the first hour is have their minds expanded with all of the knowledge and experience that we spew forth for 60 minutes. Are you trying to hold your vomit in, or what's that look?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all. You're right. Some of our analysis are absolutely mind-blowing. I will give you that. And some of them are funny. And some
100%.
Cat stories are funny. So
yes, they are. Especially when it involves them like keeling over. Anyway, so hey, it's one more saved soul. That's all I got to say. Anyways,
he's on a roll, Lauren.
Already.
I'm always on a roll. So, the other piece of good news is that starting next week, it's up right now, but I did not know that YouTube was going to take 24 hours at least to activate the live streaming option, and I did it at like 7:40 last night. So did not hit the deadline for this show, but starting next week, if you are available Monday nights and you want to listen to us live, but you hate Facebook, as you should, you will be able to watch us also live on our new YouTube channel. So you'll just have to do a search for the Odyssey Files radio show, and our last 3 episodes are already up. You can watch those. And when I say watch, I mean like actually watch us. Hi, everybody. And what?
Nothing.
You made a face.
I did make a face.
See,
I was looking at something else. So,
of course you were. And you'll be able to see the face that Dave just made.
Exactly.
But you can then go on our new YouTube channel and watch the episodes. So again, next week we'll be streaming live over on the YouTube page, as well as our Odyssey Files Facebook page. So simulcast, and then as always, you'll be able to get it through almost all podcast platforms currently, except Apple, and I'm going to take care of that this week. So hopefully we'll be on Apple Podcasts here shortly. So anyway, what we decided to do while we were waiting for Ms. Luman is we're just going to shoot the shit and talk about a few kind of paranormal in the news stories, which Dave has kind of popped up, and including, as he told me, a follow-up to a story that we did on Valentine's Day, which I'm very excited, especially if it's the one that I'm thinking of, because I'm really looking forward to hearing this.
Yep, and I'm going to bet you that it's probably the one you're thinking of. So, Brocade and her ghostly lover, Eduardo, who is a Victorian, long dead Victorian soldier. She is back in making headlines in the UK. Her recent reason for being kind of in the spotlight is she said that her inbox has been flooded with as many as 10,000 messages a day by men begging her to kick her ghostly fiance to the curb. She admits that she has been left amused by some of her more imaginative admirers, revealing these messages are hilarious. One guy who messaged me wanted us to sleep in a coffin. Another collected taxidermy insects. And another's biggest selling point was being alive. I mean, what more could you possibly want, she said. So the singer shared a look at several of her emails, and one man declaring her to be too stunning to get hitched to a dead man, pleading with her, "I'm alive, baby, and ready for you. Please marry me." Another implored, "Oh my God, don't marry that psychotic spirit. Marry me. I will treat you right, not scare you like that. I could leave messages for you in the shower too, but I could take you away for real." While a third beseeched, "I'm a real soldier in the army. I'm not Victorian or dead, and I'm also not anything special. But I am a good, hardworking bloke who will look after you and show you a good time." So despite all the efforts of her admirers have gone to, including one even penning her a poem, Brocade claims that she hasn't been tempted by any of the messages that she's received so far. However, Eduardo is said to be extremely furious and has made his feelings on the matter well known. According to Brocade, "I didn't say a word to Eduardo. I was trying to keep it a secret, but he found out, and he is furious about them. When I read them, the lights in the house flicker like crazy. My room that I'm sitting in turns ice cold, and my phone went black and died. It wouldn't turn back on for hours, even when I plugged it into its charger. Mysteriously, when the power came back on, several of the messages I had been reading were in my trash folder. So obviously, Eduardo is not amused." So there is the update for our ongoing love story of the artist singer in the UK who is marrying or plans to marry Eduardo, her Victorian soldier lover. And their guest list, she didn't touch on that, so I'm assuming it still is going to be some of the greatest dead people of all times, like she had mentioned in our Valentine's Day special.
Oh, yeah. Well, it wasn't the story that I thought you were talking about.
Okay.
That I thought that you were talking about the person who got married to the pirate.
Mm-mm. No, I didn't see any updates on that one. This is the most recent update.
Gotcha. But I do remember now. This is the one that wants like Marilyn Monroe.
Yes.
And like
Shakespeare. But she's not going to put up with any bullshit where any like 45-minute prose by Shakespeare while he tries to take the stage and take over her special day.
Yep. You know, you got to lay down the law with the dead.
Right.
You know, you can't just have them take over your life.
No, so, Elvis is going to be there. Right.
That's right. Elvis, Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah. Shakespeare's invited as long as he doesn't overstep his bounds.
Yeah. Make sure that, you know, Marilyn is for the bride and the Kennedys are for the groom. You know, keep them on opposite sides of the room.
Right.
So, you know, hijinks will ensue.
Oh, I'm sure it already has. But...
Yeah. Oh, yes. I do remember that story now. I didn't until you started talking about all the famous people that they were inviting. So, or that they expect to come to their living dead wedding.
This is the epitome of my 15 minutes of fame, I think. Right? Like I know
exactly what I thought of.
Right. I mean, like if you go back, like we went into a lot of we actually read a lot of detail about it in our Valentine's Day special show because it was like this really interesting, it fit right into the mold, you know. It's this love story between a living person and a dead person. What greater kind of thing to throw on a paranormal talk radio show for Valentine's Day than this weird relationship. But it's going in some weird, it was weird to begin with, but now it's like going into the 15 minutes of fame, Andy Warhol type of thing, you know, where like she's going to fizzle out here shortly. I think. I don't think we're going to see a third story. Let's put it that way. I don't think we'll be sharing a third story from Brocade and her lover.
Yes, we will.
Will we?
Because absolutely. Because
if they actually get married, we will for certain. Right.
Well, there's not only that, but then there's going to be the love triangle drama. Don't forget about that.
Right.
The only question is it going to be a living guy or another dead person?
Right. It'll be a living guy. That'll make a really interesting triangle.
So, yeah. So, Lauren, you were not here for that episode. or for any episode where we talked about these women who are having relationships, and there isn't even the lady out of Australia who apparently is the spirit bicycle.
She's the paranormal hooker.
Yeah,
she bangs all the ghosts.
Yeah, it doesn't even matter as long as you're dead.
Yeah,
as long as you're dead, she's all over you.
Yeah,
that's an interesting job title.
Yeah, paranormal hooker.
Yeah, put that on your resume.
Yeah, it's self-proclaimed, so
it is. What is your take on the people who have relationships with the dead?
I guess if I was dead, I don't know why I'd see appeal in being in a relationship with a living person. I guess the whole situation I can't like totally understand because that doesn't make sense to me, but to each their own. I guess I don't know why the dead would be inclined to go to their wedding or something, because they, from what I can tell, do not know who this lady is and have no real connection. So they're just being chosen to attend the wedding just because they're already dead. Is that my understanding?
I would say yes. I would say that you're right, because she's going from Elvis, Marilyn Monroe to Shakespeare.
Yeah, just because
they're dead. Yeah. Correct. Right. She has absolutely no relationship whatsoever to any of those people.
I don't understand. If it makes her happy, go for it, but don't drag other spirits into it that don't want any part of it. Don't assume they're coming because they might not show. But I'd be interested to see how that with reception goes, like how the toasts go and stuff like that. Like, do they just leave a mic up there and wait for 15 minutes and hope something comes up?
I would go. I would go just to document it, to be honest. No, I would go just to experience it.
Seriously, there's going to be one person in that reception hall, and that's going to be her. There's going to be a whole bunch of chairs. There's going to be lights. There may be a photographer.
That'll be sad.
He's going to take photos of empty seats. And it's just going to be her acting like she's having the greatest time of her life.
That'll be sad.
But for her, it'll be the happiest day of her life.
Right. According to her.
As long as she's happy.
Right.
But I don't know, not my idea of a good wedding, but it's not my wedding. So
yeah,
whatever.
But what about not her specifically, but what about people, whether male or female, having physical relationships with the dead?
It's definitely an interesting concept you don't hear much about on rare occasions, like these two people. I did see a news article about that lady that was going to marry that dead pirate or whatever a while ago, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting, but I don't understand. I'm gonna stop to try to understand it because I can't understand it. But anyway, I think trying to think this through, I guess one of the things that I would hope that can come across clearly is we have a hard enough time getting a regular yes or no answer to a random question. And when we're on an investigation, directly talking to these spirits. If you're just somebody that's not really an investigator, or maybe you are, just whatever you have, how do you get consent from a spirit? That in itself would be a very hard thing to knowingly obtain, to be 100% positive. But just the whole thing kind of confuses me, but I get that there are some people that's what they feel comfortable with. Maybe just a physical person, a physical living human being. Maybe they've had some past trauma and they just want to take that factor out completely and they just don't want to deal with it. They would rather be with somebody that has experienced a full life, gone through the process of death, and has maybe come to realizations that they now know more and they now kind of like understand more of what it means to be alive. I don't quite know. It's a very interesting situation.
Lauren, are you trying to say possibly that these people are insane?
I don't think that insane is the correct term to use. I would say that there is a possibility that there could be mental illness behind some of these situations. Not all. It could be real. I don't know these people, but there is the possibility that that could be at play. But there's always the possibility that that could be at play. Let's be honest. In every single situation, that could always be a factor. So that's not, in my mind, that's not different. And I would not classify them as insane. I think that's like I don't know. I don't like that term.
It's a stigma.
Yes, it is.
Right.
Oh, well, I could have said crazy.
That's
Crazy
not any better.
That's a worse stigma.
Yeah.
What?
That's a worse stigma. But
whatever. No, hold on.
Okay.
Before we move on.
All right.
Why can people just not be crazy anymore?
Well, you think about like all the like hundreds of years that people that have had a mental illness have been labeled as crazy. Like, oh, that's just a crazy person. That's the town crazy person. You know, like that. It's not a modern helpful term, and it makes somebody like, if you're calling them that, it's not going to help their situation at all, and you're going to seem very judgmental and misunderstanding of their situation. So it's in my mind, it's not a respectful term to call somebody.
I'm going to follow up on that because it's the same thing with after working in my previous job with mentally disabled adults, that you wouldn't call them retards, which was a very popular term for people that were mentally ill. You know, that people use that term all the time. I used it growing up, you know, but now it's not an accurate reflection of people that are struggling, right? Like some of the people that I met that were disabled adults that I worked with, like they were better people than some people that have absolutely no issues.
Oh,
you know,
100% agree.
And they were like loving and kind and funny, and you know, and they had an innocence to them that some people that have gone through some shit or whatever has caused them to be jaded don't have anymore, you know, and they're not pleasant to be around. So I would agree with Lauren though. I don't think that, you know, I think that I don't know. All right, so I'm gonna throw this out there. I don't know that you can have a physical relationship with a spirit. Like I got to draw the line somewhere on there, and I guess drawing that line, I got to say I don't know that you could have sexual intercourse with a spirit. I don't know. I know that there's
what like an
incubus and succubus stories are, right?
Mm-hmm.
For a guy, I guess if you have, you know, like if you've got an evil entity attached to you like that, a sexual spirit, you could just be having sexual dreams, wet dreams, whatever. I don't know that there's actually, I'm not saying that there's not something evil in the room. I don't know that I believe the whole thing about how they're stealing, you know, your seed, and because that's really what they're doing. You know, I mean, that's like the whole process behind it is stealing a human being seed, you know, male seed, and then like taking it and using it for devious purposes. That's the whole backstory that you never hear about when you hear about succubuses. You know, they don't go into that detail. They just say it's you know, it's this a really attractive lady who's really a hag, like the old hag theory type of mentality, or has this witchly, long-haired, nasty, dirty hair, you know, not appealing whatsoever in reality, but gives that false sense of like this beautiful, voluptuous, alluring woman that you find yourself very attracted to, even though that's not who it truly is. So, look at Mike's going, what?
See now I'm confused because the succubuses and incubuses don't actually steal your seed.
Yeah, they do if you actually do research on them. The succubus, that's what it's trying to do.
Mm-hmm. That's why they're quote unquote dangerous, because they can take it a step further, and that's a little scary.
Right. Like they're trying to mash together, your semen and their ability to conceive and create a demonic force of kind of like subhuman hybrid type of thing.
Okay, then.
You got to dig deeper than page 1, Mike. But all right, let's move on, because I got another really good story. And it is, this is a very interesting story. So I'm going to show this picture. Hopefully, let me see if it'll come up. Look halfway decent as I'm talking about it. Give me 1 second.
Way to be prepared, Dave.
I am prepared. It's right here. Come on, girls. All right, so these are. Okay, so you can kind of see it, right? So it's a kind of a Raggedy Ann-ish type of doll and like another little doll. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Your favorite.
So, yeah, exactly. So this guy bought this painting at he's on eBay. He went under a pseudonym of Dan Smith. He bought the painting for $50 at a flea market. And the lady who was at the flea market that sold it to him cautioned him not to buy it, which doesn't make any sense to me, because then why in the hell did she have the painting there? But we're going to bypass that for this moment. But he sees the painting. He looks at this painting, okay, the painting I just showed you. He looks at it, and in his mind's eye, he sees love and light. That's what he claims. Okay. After owning it, he said that all he saw was the end of times. Okay. He said, it didn't take long before I hit what seemed like an epic losing streak. Among the calamities that Smith reported befalling him after purchasing the painting were a persistent cold spell that caused the temperature in his house to plummet and a sudden invasion of unnamed insects. After searching for one such insect that had accosted him in bed, Smith said he noticed a crack had formed in the plaster in his wall. My house is old with no insulation. As I put my finger on the fissure to feel the cold air behind it, crumbs of plasterwork dropped to the floor, he said. I looked down and realized they were not in fact, pieces of the wall, but maggots wiggling around. Above them, adult insects emerged through the crack. An infestation obviously was lingering behind it. Smith also claims that the curse cost his pet hamster her life. And I won't go into that because he goes into very much detail about how his hamster died, so we're not going to go there. But following 5 days of sickness, loneliness, sleeplessness, and uneasiness after his hamster died and after these other things were happening, Smith said he decided to sell the painting to be rid of it. And for those asking why he simply didn't destroy the painting, Smith explained that he was worried setting the painting on fire could rid the world of the wickedness brought about by this piece, but it could just as easily unleash the evil. So he would rather sell it to some poor soul who doesn't believe the story, or even scarier, some brave soul who does, which is why he decided that he was going to sell the painting on eBay for what he paid for it, $50. However, after amassing 39 bids, the painting actually sold for 35 times that, for a total of $1,750. Smith said he's not sure what he plans on doing with the proceeds, but he wants to donate some to charity. He is looking for a charity that helps young artists, and he said that he will donate some of the proceeds to that charitable effect. So, is this a true story, or is this another one of those 15 minutes of fame things?
My first inclination is that it's not, because he went under the pseudonym and apparently isn't trying to get any sort of fame. Well, maybe he is, but I guess I would use my real name if I was trying to get fame from it, but also, why didn't he just bury the painting, or he didn't have to destroy it, just put it somewhere where nobody could get at it, rather than just pass it to the next guy. But
I agree. It's what the guy did with the Dybbuk box when he had it, buried it in his backyard for decades before he dug it back up.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he had it out of way. Yeah, well, right. And then he sold it, I mean, which was stupid. But I'm just saying, for decades, the guy owned it. He buried it in the backyard, got it out of his house and put it in a chest and buried it in the backyard. So
I think he probably took a lot of bad stuff that happened and blamed it on this painting. Like, I honestly don't think, and you may find this shocking, I don't think there's anything paranormal here going on. I think I think the timing of it is, is interesting, but
try and get it like, there we go.
It's such a creepy painting.
So it's right. You got like this Raggedy Ann-ish type of doll, and then you've got like just basically to me what looks like just a normal baby doll. The one in the pink dress looks like any type of doll that you would find in the late 60s, early 70s. Right? I mean, it doesn't look like anything creepy. Yeah, it won't focus that close. A little. I mean, do you guys get any feeling off that painting?
No.
I don't like it.
The only feeling that I get off that is sympathy, because I can't believe somebody actually paid $50 for that.
I don't think he did.
That's a terrible thing.
If this guy paid $50 for this, he needs to get slapped upside the head. Seriously. Because this is like $1 at a garage sale.
Yeah.
That's you know what I'm saying? Right. Like, it is hand painted. Like, somebody actually did paint that. It's signed. It's got 3 initials on it and the date it was painted in 1967. That is legitimate. You know, and it is an oil painting on canvas, but it's, I don't know, what's the draw to it? If I were walking by, I'd be like, no.
But speaking of being a draw, we have our guest.
Timing?
That perfect timing for our segue.
Nice.
So, without further ado or whatever, we have our great guest, Miss Kristen Luman, ready to go. And here she is. Hello, Kristen. How are you?
Oh, I love that intro. Nice segue.
Segue.
Speaking of being drawn to something, here's Kristen.
Not so much drawn, but a draw.
A draw. Okay.
A draw. Yeah. Right. We go from the creepy child painting to our lovely guest, Kristen.
Oh, thank you.
Show Kristen that awful painting. It's just terrible.
Let me wait till it focuses in here. So the doll's eyes are not black; they are actually blue with black, and it's like a little Raggedy Ann doll. And then what I would say was like a. My light is. Hold on.
Yeah, I noticed the redhead in there. I can see that. We're typically drawn as scary.
No, that's fine.
No, that's worse. But anyway,
it's all right.
Creepy.
You can find it. All you have to do is look up for haunted eBay picture, and you can see it like what it really looks like. But but interesting. So the guy buys it supposedly at a flea market and pays $50 for it because he was drawn to it because of he thought it was like fresh in the beginning and like it represented life and emergence to him. And then after owning it for a couple of days, he decided that it meant end of times.
Oh, okay.
So he
on it.
So it didn't take very long to turn his
two very opposite theories and emotions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he puts it on eBay, hoping to sell it to some poor sucker who's not afraid of like paintings and hauntings and things like that, and it goes for $1,750.
All right.
So
I think what I'm going to do if I get some free time in the next week or two is I'm just going to make some stick figures and stuff and like do this painting, maybe throw in some pastel colors. I'm going to call it a haunted object. And I'm going to make up. I'm going to make up a story about how all of a sudden my cat coughed up blood and like imploded. and it was all due to this painting. I think that it's demonic in nature, and I want to sell it for $75.
Well, I
And
don't know if you can do that now that you've sort of exposed your plan now.
Right. Right.
Well,
you may want to, talk one of your friends into doing something like that for more of an experiment, because now everybody knows what they're getting into if they buy that.
Right.
Not everybody in the world listens to the show.
What?
I mean, most of the world,
two-thirds,
but not 2/3 at least.
Yeah.
But somewhere out there is somebody who will buy it before they listen to the show, and by then I'll put a no refund policy on it, and it'll be too late.
And anybody who is watching and listening right now, mum's the word. If you see this painting out on the market, just it is social experiment. So don't say anything rude for us.
Right. So if you see one of your friends put up a nice colorful painting of like Barney the dinosaur eating kids or something like that, whatever comes to mind.
How does is that what comes to mind?
That's not what came to my mind when he's talking about a haunted painting, Barney eating children, but I guess Mike's going there.
That's your go-to.
No, the only reason that I went there is because back in high school, I had summer school and nobody cared what we did. And so I spent all of summer school drawing on the whiteboard stick figures and Barney, and I made this like nice comic strip. And I remember Barney eating people because that was funny at the time. And that's what came to mind. So that was the last time I got artistic in a drawing sense. So there you go.
See, this painting that he got, that's the perfect type of painting to say it's haunted. Because it's kind of an obscure type of, why did you paint that in the first place, right? So if you've got this like we said, like I said earlier, you've got this kind of typical late 60s, early 70s type of doll that you would get for your daughter at Christmas or for her birthday or whatever, right? Nothing scary. Nothing scary. Yeah, nothing scary about it at all. But then you got this kind of funky, overly hairy miniature Raggedy Ann doll. And so those two together in a painting is kind of odd. It's almost like the doll has a doll. So that in itself makes it, you can create a backstory to that, I guess, is what my mind goes to. Like I could create a backstory to that. I could have got more than $17.50. Let's put it that way. Like I could have advertised the hell out of this and like had a great backstory and got more than $17.50 for a $3 painting I bought at a flea market or a garage sale.
There's a sucker born every minute.
Yeah. Yeah. And people like to collect weird stuff. And people that have a lot of money like to collect weird things.
If my mom saw that, she buys my sister and I both have red hair. And so we have paintings all over the house and my brother is a brunette. And so with one brunette and two redheads. So I'm sure if she might have seen that at a garage sale, she might have
bought it. Yeah.
Because we were redheads.
You could have owned it. Or your mom could have owned it. You could have enjoyed it every time you went over for Sunday dinner.
I'm assuming though, with her disposition, she wouldn't have discovered evil in it. That's
probably not.
It's all about perception. But if that's someone's true belief, then we can't fault them for it. If they really feel like for them, evil is coming out of that painting, who are we to say that that's not true for them?
I agree.
So, two quick things. One, you've ruined my segue, Dave. It's all right.
You're welcome.
That's all right, because I was regressing back to my high school days.
Oh,
there we go. But now I'm going to go a completely different direction before we come back to that, because you bringing up your mom, Kristen, and that's a question that I've never asked anybody that has ever been on the show. How did your parents react to you getting in the paranormal, like getting, and then like getting on Ghost Mine and getting in Ghost Hunt? Like how is their attitude and reaction to what you do beyond your obviously your practice?
My mother is a woman of faith, and so am I. And so for her, that was a little bit difficult of whether or not I was trying to bring up the dead with seances and getting into black magic that is somewhat against our set belief systems. So that was a little bit difficult for her to accept, although they've seen me dabble in this world since I was a child. You know, I've told you before in past interviews that I was conducting this kind of stuff, playing with the Ouija board. She was really good about allowing me to play with that because she thought it was just a toy. I think she was a little naive, to be honest with you. And once she saw that I felt like I was having experiences, then she took away the Ouija board, and it sort of became a mute discussion in our family for a good through my high school years. And I actually pulled out of it a little bit during my high school years, but got back into it with call paranormal psychology courses. My parapsych, they were totally open with that because it went along with being a therapist, and they were very happy and very encouraging of that. They've always known that I've been interested in that, and they've always allowed me to express my thoughts and beliefs as long as it didn't necessarily negate their thoughts or beliefs. And in faith, there are ghosts, there are spirits. And so being able to somehow take that world and somewhat mold it into the world that we've already created in our belief system was a bit of a transition. More so for me, because obviously I've experienced more than she has, but she has been, I'm very lucky. I have two wonderful parents, and they've been very open. Now, when I was first asked to do Ghost Mind, open-minded for it. When I was first asked to do Ghost Mind, that was one of the biggest decisions I had to make without my parents' support. They did not want me to go on the show whatsoever. Only because in the contract, they basically tell you they can film you doing anything, anywhere. So they were, all concerned about the cameras following me into our home, our family home, and like being able to film while we're in the bathroom or something. And I'm like, nobody wants to see, where are you going with this? This is not going to happen. So that was the only time they were more against it, but I went ahead and did it anyways. And after that, I mean, they visited Sumter all the time, and my dad became best buddies with all the miners. And so then after that, it was one of those, oh, that was one of the best decisions you've ever made. So that was the only time I got a little bit of grief for it. But they've been very welcoming and open. And my mom's pretty open-minded and listening to new ideas, but she is still very set on her basic belief system that won't sway.
Which is, I was going to say, which is rock solid, because I'm a man of faith too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to have your core. You have to have your core, right? And then you can branch off from your core. And once you're 100% comfortable with your core, I think it's easy. It's easy to move on to other things, because you can always come back to what your set ground is. You can always come back to your core, to your center point, where you need to refresh, you need a little bit of alignment, you need some quiet time, some meditation time, whatever the case might be. That feeling of safety, like that feeling of assurance for me, allows me to go do things like astral project, allows me to go into a haunted location, allows me to walk into a residential situation that has a potentially bad spirit in it that is terrorizing this family and their kids. And I don't feel, people ask me that all the time, and they don't ask me that much anymore, but they used to ask me all the time, well, aren't you afraid? Like, don't you get afraid? And I'm like, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to walk into that situation. And it's not arrogant, and it's not because I think I'm some great human being, some powerful, and that has nothing to do with it. I'm not afraid because I know I can always go back to my core.
Yeah.
Right. And my center point. And so I know that I can venture out and do so. And if I find myself in trouble, I can always come back and I can regain my composure, and then go back in again, knowing what I'm up against. Because sometimes you never know. Like, I've had residential cases that seemed very innocent and turned out to be very bad. And I've had cases that on paper looked very bad and turned out to be very innocent. So you never exactly know what you're walking into when you're walking into a family in need.
Hmm. Hmm. And in the same way, people ask me, "Aren't you afraid?" And I often I'll get scared of, loud noises or something jumps out and
Right.
surprises
Right.
me. When I'm walking into the situation, even knowing of the history and hearing the stories from the paranormal witnesses of what they experienced, I always feel in my own self safe because of my belief system. And that oftentimes doesn't waver. And therefore, I'm oftentimes not afraid. And I feel like I'm going to be protected no matter what. And that's why a lot of times people do ask me, what about attachments and taking them home with me? And I've always said, and I'll stick to it, is that I've just never believed in that for myself. And I've never had a experience where I felt like something attached to me. However, and we've talked about this before, when I've had a couple bad days after investigation or different days or sort of peculiar days, is that possibly an attachment? And I'm just not registering it, or I'm not recognizing of that. And instead I'm just thinking, I'm in a bad mood this next couple days, or I feel weird or something feels off. It always eventually goes away.
Right.
So whether it is or it isn't, I always feel that, and part of my education and my knowledge and how I help people, you stick with the belief system and you work within that. And I've never had an experience that made me think differently. But is that because of my own belief? That's the question. That's how powerful our mind is.
I don't know. What do you think? I mean, that's a good, you brought up your own good question there. So what do you think? Do you think I'm nuts for thinking that I have a core system that I can go back to and that I should be afraid sometimes? Or do you think that there really is legitimately a space that we can go back to that is rock solid, 100% reliable in our lives?
If it is a strong enough belief system, yes. And as I'll explain later on in our talk today, how hypnosis works, I'll explain the belief system in the mind and you'll understand a little bit more of why that is such a stronghold once that's in place, and how you can continue to go back to it if it is implanted in a strong enough way. If you were raised as a person of faith and you were exposed to a lot of that teaching and you accepted it wholeheartedly, which we oftentimes do as children, and now as we become adults and we develop the critical part of the mind and we can question that. But if the main belief system is still somewhat set in stone, for example, I once became angry in my faith and decided I was going to become an atheist. However, I kept accidentally praying, thinking for things that happened in my life. And when things were going wrong, I kept accidentally praying. It was so ingrained in me. And so I finally just gave up being an atheist because I was like, I guess we're stuck together, God, because you're not going away. I keep accidentally talking with you. And so then I knew that wasn't something that I was going to easily move away from. That was something that was set in from childhood. And if I wanted to spend a lot of time working on it, yes, maybe I could have somewhat removed that belief system, or at least desensitized it in a way. However, since it was set there at that time period, it wasn't going anywhere. Yeah. And it's, it also depends on what that belief system means to you, what is associated with it. If it is associated with good feelings, positive, feeling safe, feeling hopeful, having something that you feel that is way more powerful than you can ever be, backing you up. Every time you think about that faith, you are also reconfirming that faith. And that's how it continues, obviously, to get stronger and stronger in the mind. And therefore, it is always something that if it's still there, like I said, you can go back to and relive or re-feel those feelings that are also associated with it. So if all those feelings are somewhat good, or at least something that you have decided that this is something I do believe, maybe not all of it, but at least the main points of it, then that is something definitely you can use or utilize as a shield of armor, as hope, as whatever you need to help you heal or be able to go out and experience with greater confidence.
So, Kristen, with your training and your education and everything, what is your take then on people who bring in like stones and stuff like that aren't really, they're not faith driven or anything like that, or it's not like, I don't want to say mind over matter, but do you think that it's just the mind's belief that the stones and the bracelets and the necklaces that everybody wears, if we truly believe that they're there to help and that they will help, is that what gives them their power? The fact that we legitimately believe that?
I think in all honesty, I think it could be a bit of both. I worked at a meditation studio called Unplug, where I conducted guided imagery meditations, which is basically hypnosis, with classrooms filled with people. And one of the meditations that was conducted there that I didn't participate in, I didn't teach because I wasn't, I felt skilled enough in the area, was doing meditations with crystal healing. And people got a lot out of it. They really enjoyed it. There have been proven studies that these do emit some sort of energy. Now, are we tapping into that energy and that's connecting with our own energy and it's making something happen? Possibly. I think a lot of it has to do with the belief also of the energy. I mean, we all know about the placebo effect, and I've experienced it myself. And the greatest example I can use is that when I was in college and having to take on my exams, I would always get this drink in the morning that gave me a shot of energy. And I could feel it after I had the sip. Now, could I really feel it? But I knew there was a shot of energy in there. And I felt like a little, oh, okay, I'm a little boosted up here. And one morning, though, I was going into class, but I wasn't taking a test. I'm like, I don't need the energy today. And I just kind of want to relax, sit in the back of the room and just listen. I still got the drink, but not the energy shot. However, once I drank the drink, I still had the same sort of feeling because my mind had gotten so used to drinking that drink, knowing there was an energy shot in there and feeling those feelings, that even when I didn't have that energy shot, my brain and my body still went into that same sort of mode because that had become its known. It knew that that drink represented that. And therefore, my body reacted to my belief system of how it was affecting me. And so that's an example of how your body can still go into some of the emotions or even emit the same sort of chemicals, dopamine, serotonin, of what I was getting from this drink to make me happy, even though that component was no longer in it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So when there's enough belief system, I mean, the brain is the most powerful thing. We all live in paradigms. We create our own paradigms. We create our own little boxes of what we live in and what we believe and what we do not believe. And we, for the most part, stick to it. We can be swayed, but these are things that if the belief is strong enough and it's helping you, I'm not going to say it's not. If that's working for you, then that's working for you. So I'm not going to say whether or not that type of healing or that type of a rock that you may just find on the ground, but it reminds you of something special. A lot of times people pick up things that remind them of a past loved one, a feather that they feel that their grandmother had sent to them, or it's a sign that their father is still there and he's sending these special little signals of love. If that makes somebody feel better and they truly believe that was a gift from their father or their passed away grandmother, and that helps them in their life to either cope or give them confidence or whatever they may be needing, then more power to it. But I do believe a lot of what we find to help us is what we obviously give power to, if that makes sense.
So do you think that so here's kind of an odd question maybe, but do you think it's kind of dangerous from your standpoint that if somebody is walking through a park and is looking for a sign and a feather falls and they pick that feather up and they think that that feather didn't just happen to fall from a bird who was cleaning itself, that it fell specifically for them? Would you be comfortable using that as an anchor point moving forward, like in their therapy?
Oh, completely.
Would you? Okay.
Completely. Yeah. I use people's faiths all the time. It actually, and hypnotherapists are being honest, uh, would admit that can be more difficult to work with a client with no belief system than a client that does have a belief system. We utilize that in therapy and direct it to where it needs to go to make the most sort of effect and help our healing and the greatest power. In hypnosis, you can meet your spirit guide. I've had hypnosis people come in for working on confidence. And while in hypnosis, they had a visit from a past dead relative, and that gave them what they needed. I didn't take them there. I was just talking about confidence and feeling good about yourself. Their mind took them to the place of seeing their passed away relative. Was their passed away relative really there or not? Who am I to say? But when I see them come out of hypnosis with that big smile on their face and a sense of peace or tears because they got what they needed to heal, because the mind knew what they needed and it brought it to them, I'm not going to question that. I'm just happy with the healing.
I would be too. I agree with you 100%, right? That's not something to question. That's just something to use and move forward
Mm-hmm.
in a positive fashion. Yeah.
Yeah. And people will come up with it themselves. I won't talk about a spirit animal per se in a session. I rarely ever bring that kind of stuff up unless the client wants to go there. But I've had people who, again, were working on recovery or somebody who may have passed away that they're trying to deal with the death and they're trying to mourn and move through it. But yet during the discussion, when I had them under hypnosis and I was helping them through their emotions, they saw a yellow lab that they just pet the entire time, and it soothed them and made them feel comfortable. So that then becomes a symbol in hypnotherapy to use when we need to help to relax the client. All of a sudden, the yellow lab has been introduced. I didn't introduce it. The mind did, because the mind knew what the person needed. Did I make you guys speechless?
No, I'm waiting for those guys to chime in. I could interview you myself, but I'm trying to be polite and like pausing so that everybody else could get questions in without me constantly jumping in. So,
Me too.
When you guys are ready, I have
Lauren.
a whole diagram and how hypnosis works, so I can explain that too if we want to get more into hypnotherapy and how it works with depression.
All right, so I have a question that I want to throw out for all four of us. All right, so let's do that before we get into your specialty and your background and stuff. I have a question for all four of us that I want to pose, because I saw this the other night. I thought it was extremely interesting, and I thought I need to talk about this, not because I need to search for the answer, but because I think it's an interesting concept, and so I want to see what you all feel about it. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of background. There is a recently new show that is out, and it deals with a family that has lived on this ranch for 3 years, and they have had some very dark and negative experiences that they have documented. So they've experienced they have some pretty credible evidence that they've captured themselves. They invited some people out. The people came out. They listened to what was happening in what location and stuff like that. And they went in and they documented. And in the very first episode, they've got 4 solid Class A EVPs. And those Class A EVPs back up what the client said was happening in that location. Now, I'm taking this at face value, so let's just assume that here, okay? Mm-hmm. I'm not taking this as some made-for-TV production bullshit. I'm taking this at face value. The family is living in the old church, and there has been a lot of weird stuff happening in their sleeping and living quarters in the church. The people that are investigating go in and they say, why are you here? They're asking questions. Who are you? Why are you here? Why are you messing with the family? Is something going on here we should be aware of? Is something going on here the family should know about? And then the guy asking the questions, he didn't get confrontational, but he got a little aggressive and said, who are you? Why are you here? I want to know who you are. and a rock solid Class A EVP said, I'm a demon. I mean, any one of us that is experienced, that listens to, that has been in the field investigating, if we got that EVP, we'd be like, holy shit, you got to hear this EVP, right? So here's my question. Do you think a demon legitimately would have to say, I'm a demon? Because this is really screwing with my head, because I have had cases that have had demonic activity and families that have gone through stuff where I have been involved in those cases. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on whether a demonic entity needs to announce its presence and say it's a demon at a location, or whether it would just be quiet and not answer. Anybody?
Go ahead, Kristen.
I love how you volunteered me first.
You're our guest. You go first, regardless.
I'm not in the head of the demon, so I'm not sure how I would respond to that question. Really, I don't know how to respond to that question, because I don't, from what we know from demonic spirits, is that there is something about being recognized and being praised, or even if it's not praised, that other people will acknowledge their power. It's the point of coming across in the first place, to receive that power. But they also, from what I know, that, or at least of research, that they also take different forms to be praised. Maybe one in a doll, where that doll becomes something of a symbol to the family that is special, and it's looking, I mean, I've heard stories where people bought something at a garage sale, and at first they thought it was just sort of a fun little mask from Africa, and then all of a sudden it took on this whole new meaning, where it was this spirit that was in this tribe, and all of a sudden now they're somewhat praising this or putting it high on their wall, and it talks to them and tells them what to do, and so far everything's positive, yet these people have now become completely transfixed with this one item. Is that a positive or a negative? And so that's what I'm saying. I feel like in a lot of ways they can do it in a hidden sort of form, or they can just come out right and say it. However, I don't know what the rules are in the demon world, of whether or not, what the purpose of exactly is always to make the announcement of their identity. And, what I also I've never experienced, I'm only talking about stories I've heard in people's own accounts, that the demon will sometimes actually give its demonic name as opposed to just saying I'm a demon. Right. However, that usually will create or produce more of a curiosity in those around it to find out who this is. I mean, everything is about gathering attention on me, whether that be positive or negative, almost to me feeds into it. So whether or not it felt it had to announce it was I really don't know. I haven't worked enough with that type of haunting. Or ever, actually. I've never experienced what I know to be fact, without a doubt, a demonic sort of spirit.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I have never personally experienced that, but I do believe that actions speak louder than words. So I think kind of, if you're trying to determine if it is in fact demonic activity, I would look at the actual are people getting choked in the middle of the night, or what physical activity is happening. Yes, we should take into account EVPs and stuff. My only hesitation there is we know that there are human spirits that like to make themselves a lot bigger and scarier than they actually are. So you got to take that into consideration, because people in real life lie, and spirits in the spirit world will also lie. I do also, I'm trying to figure this out in my head as I'm speaking here, because I'm a little confused by it. Because I know if you announce yourself as a demon, one of the main things that you see, at least I've seen in a lot of exorcism cases, or where you're trying to expel something, is knowing its name gives you power to kind of get rid of it. Like in a lot of situations, like the very first thing you try to figure out if it is like an exorcism situation, what is the name? Because that is going to help you expel it sooner, quicker. Like it's going to make you stronger, the human trying to like rid it of whatever it's affecting. But at the same time, I do know that, like Kristen, like you said, our understanding is that they can be very greedy and they want the recognition and they want to be known as, oh, I was the demon that took down like this whole family kind of thing. Like they want that recognition. So that's always been kind of a like seesaw almost in my mind. Like, okay, you know, like it depends on the case. Obviously, every demon, as we would like to call them, is different and wants different things and has different motives. But it is a case-by-case basis in my mind, but I would go more off of the actions of what's happening to the family rather than some spirit, whether it is a demon or not, just saying, I am a demon.
Mm-hmm.
You're up, Mike.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself, because that was pretty on par with what my answer was.
Didn't mean to steal it from you. I'm sorry.
No, that's quite all right. You know, I believe that, you know, if a demon wants recognition, it's not going to just be like, I'm a demon, and then maybe a couple other EVPs. You know, it's going to start throwing shit around. It's going to actually make some actions as opposed to words. However, normal spirits who, again, want to look tough or want the investigators to cream their pants or go running out of the house or whatever, is going to do whatever it needs to in order to get that reaction. And what better way, as we all know, than to tell it's a demon? I mean, how many times have we been on cases where we put up the spirit box and who are you? And you get the devil. You know, you hear it all the time. They're not. It's just somebody trying to get a reaction out of them. I don't know what show you're talking about, so I don't know any of the actual other evidence.
I'm not promoting it. I'm not promoting the show or the channel, so I'm just going to leave it as ambiguous.
No, that's fine.
But you can,
that's fine.
You can. It's a recent show, so if you did 5 minutes of research, you'd find it
probably.
Yourself. Right,
but
so.
You know, I wasn't asking for what the show was. I was just saying I haven't seen the show, so I don't know what the claims are. I don't know what the evidence that they have is beyond what you said. Right. But yeah, in this particular instance, I'm going to chalk it up to it. Whatever spirit's there is just trying to make itself look bigger and stronger than it is, and is probably trying to get them to second guess, you know, because what better way of getting to do your thing than making all of the living people go chasing after a demon that's not actually there. So I think that whatever spirit's there, it's obviously intelligent, knows what's going on.
Oh yeah.
I think it's just fucking with them.
Yeah, I mean, all 4 EVPs that were Class A were all intelligent responses, and they were all caught in different buildings, and they're all different entities answering to different things. So there's potentially multiple spirits at this location. I don't think it's all the same entity. Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page. Like, I think that this is, I don't think that a demon needs to say I'm a demon. You know, I think that it can show it through its actions. And I think that there's more fear involved from a human standpoint. I think that there's more fear involved in not necessarily knowing what it is, right? Aren't we afraid of the unknown more than anything else, probably? Right? I mean, it's, you know, jump scares have their effect, right? You know, like I've been on investigations where I'm sitting in a room and, you know, my old partner back in the day was sitting at a very haunted location that we've been to numerous times, that we've had great activity at and gotten great evidence from, and is sitting in a chair and looks over to his right because he just happened to look to his right and there's a face coming out of the bookcase, and scared the hell out of him, for a moment, right? He wasn't scared. It was a shock to his system. He was startled. Right. You get startled, right? Because you're not expecting there to be a face coming out of the bookcase 2 feet from your shoulder, right? As you're sitting in a room.
Human reaction.
Right. So I think that in this instance, if I put myself in these shoes, if I were the demonic activity or the entity, if it is truly a demonic entity, I'm not so sure that I would say that I'm a demon. I would just leave it as, I'm going to keep messing with you, fuel myself, energize myself through taking your fear that you're displacing out into the world and absorb that in for myself. And then why would I screw that up? Right? Why would I potentially get rid of my buffet here by saying that I'm a demon? Right? I mean, I don't know. So it was a clear Class A EVP, and I thought that was the first thing that popped into my head is like, why would a demon say it's a demon? Why wouldn't it just be quiet and continue its activities that is messing with your life? Right. So I was just curious what your guys' thoughts were. So that was my question of the hour.
So Kristen, before we get into your hypnotherapy and regression therapy, one quick question about, or maybe two, I don't know. I'll wait till later for the second one. But how often, or maybe what percentage, do you think most hauntings come from our own minds and the way that our minds perceive it? Because I'm sure that's something that when you were on a paranormal investigation, that your education and that your practice has to come into play. So, I mean, for the cases that you have done, how often is it where it's like, I see where you're getting this, but this is your mind tricking you, or this is this is why you came to this decision, but there's nothing to it. It's all in your mind. Like how often or what the percentage is of paranormal cases do you think that actually happens in?
I think more often it is manifested by the mind than an actual paranormal experience. To put a percentage on it, I would say at least 85%, maybe even more.
Yes. That's gonna play into my next question later. But
that's just a guesstimate on the spot. But more often than not, by speaking to the paranormal witness and sort of checking out the place, it unravels for me pretty quickly. However, that being said, because I work from that part of my mind of always analyzing the situation of what can be an actual psychological or emotional experience that has now been manifested into a paranormal experience, I'm constantly questioning that. And I try to go into a haunting and learning the facts as neutral as possible. And so I try to look at it as what could have actually happened in the way of, okay, if this paranormal experience, take it at face value, this person really did experience this, but how could they experience that without a paranormal experience? So I always question myself with that as well. What state of mind were they in? Were they sleeping? Oftentimes paranormal experiences do happen in bed. Is that a coincidence? I think not. And what the lighting was like, what they were doing in the day. I mean, there's so many things that go into it. The mind is affected in so many different ways, and it's amazing to me. However, more oftentimes than not, I do find that there's a logical explanation. Or you're literally just basing everything in your investigation on either one or a few or how many paranormal experience. I mean, it's all based on somebody else's experience a lot of the time until you have your own. And that's what I find the most difficult thing about this. about investigating paranormal events, because you are taking somebody else's experience at face value. You're traveling there based on somebody else's experience. Now, obviously, 4 eyes, 6 eyes, 8 eyes are better than 1 or 2. You would say it.
Or 1, right? It could be 1.
Just one really good eye.
Just one really good one, yeah.
But there's oftentimes, and it's very interesting to me also investigating with the new group. I always observe, and even a group that I've always investigated with, I always observe the group as well. And my team members know this. This is not something I hide from them, to see how them working with each other and planting seeds of suggestion and how it affects each team member. It's always amazing to me how when one person gets ill, all of a sudden another person gets ill, where before that room was a very peaceful place, everyone felt good in it, but one person gets sick and then everybody starts to go down. Is that something that's a phenomenon that's happening, or is that the suggestion and the hive mentality and how are we going to survive together? So that always goes back and forth in my brain in any investigation.
I know now that when the time comes for you to do an investigation with myself and my team, I am just out of the blue just gonna be like, Kristen, I can feel you analyzing me. Just stop it.
Well, everybody on your team. I mean, we all make these sort of, it's sort of human nature. However, yes, I'm a little bit more acute about it. I kind of go in there more and I know what I'm looking for.
All right. So since you are a student of the mind, and I'm assuming then that you know a lot of like what causes sleep paralysis. Okay. So a couple weeks ago, we did a show on sleep paralysis, and Dave, Lauren, and myself all had different numbers as to the percentage of cases that are medically sleep paralysis and what are paranormally induced sleep paralysis. And we all had, like I said, we all had different numbers. Dave had 50. Lauren went 2/3, so she went 66 as paranormally based or medically?
No,
other way
medically.
around.
Yeah.
Okay, medically.
Yeah.
So
33%
More
paranormal.
Yeah.
Right. So 66% is medically sleep paralysis. I went 90% is medically done sleep paralysis, whether stress, whether whatever. Who do you think is more correct
out of all of them? Oh, don't put me on the spot like that. I'm not.
He's trying to pump sign up his own ass because he likes to do that.
I know exactly what he's doing, actually.
Right. That's exactly what he's doing.
She is a trained expert who can put a number on who may be correct.
50-50. She already answered the question earlier because she said she
said
can't.
85.
No.
She
said I wasn't there, so I can't determine whether or not that was real. Right. So right there, what I said was I could, and I took in all the effects. I looked up all of the information on sleep paralysis, all of the medical conditions, the stress and everything else that's going on in it. I took a look at all that too, and I said that at face value, it'd be hard not to say 50-50.
Yes,
you said that there's not a paranormal experience going on versus some medical condition. And Lauren was more on my side, and you were way the hell out in left field. And Kristen doesn't look very comfortable with your question.
She's fine with the question.
She doesn't look very comfortable.
I was until you all started weighing in, and then I felt like I had to choose a winner or something like that. I will say I'm not going to answer the question straightforward. So you guys can all pick in your own perception of who I'm leaning towards. I just know in my own experience, I get a lot of people writing into me describing a paranormal experience but I haven't run across one that I can think of. I'd have to, I've read more than a few. Not one that jumps out to me that didn't basically have the check off list or the characteristics for sleep paralysis experience. They all are very, very, very similar. And that's the only thing. As therapists, we have our big DMS book that helps us to label clients. But again, that's putting it in a paradigm of this is what you portray these sort of characteristics that makes you fall into this box. And with sleep paralysis, there are some basic components that usually people describe in their experience that tend to fall under sleep paralysis, scientifically physiological experience brought on by different, oftentimes by stress, but by, like you said, it can be brought on by disorders, it can be brought on life experience, all this type of stuff. So when I read these experiences, I do always explain to the writers about sleep paralysis, and more oftentimes than not, actually, I would say at least 95% of the time, I don't receive an argument back they say, thank you for explaining this to me. I didn't know this was going on. I didn't understand that even sleep paralysis, I didn't even know what that was. And when I explain and I ask them questions, did you experience this? Even if they give me like a quick little rundown and I say, did you experience this? Did you experience it? Yes, yes, yes. Then we talk about sleep paralysis. Again, I like to go into any situation with working with somebody's belief system. How can I explain that it might not possibly be a paranormal experience and see how they respond to that? And if they seem to accept that within themselves and don't argue with that, then oftentimes in my experience, I've been able to sort of put it into that category. But that's not to say that that wasn't possibly a real paranormal experience. It's interesting, though, how it can change once somebody has been exposed to what can be going on mentally and physiologically in the body.
Do you ever find yourself in a kind of a quandary when you put people into the paradigm because they check the boxes, yet your gut tells you maybe they shouldn't be in this paradigm? I mean, do you ever get that, or do you not? Is that not something that happens?
Well, hypnosis too. Hypnotherapists, we work with avocational vocational therapy. So we don't work with psychological disorders. We refer out to that. That doesn't mean that I haven't seen somebody for a long time and then they exposed that to me when they didn't tell me that before, or I picked up on it. And I've continued to work with them for other things, as well as that ended up somewhat unraveling with that, working with other things. However, so I don't typically put people in those paradigms or in those boxes from the DMS because that's not really my title. For hypnotherapy, I work with their belief systems. And if I do think that that belief system is going more to something that needs to be dealt with psychologically, whether that be with a psychiatrist, with a doctor, or with medication, then I will refer out.
So, great segue. Woohoo!
Just thinking the same thing.
So, for you, how does your hypnotherapy work? I mean, what is it that you do and are able to do for your clients?
So, I'm going to be very honest with you guys and tell you a little secret. They don't
we like
really,
secrets.
Yeah, we like secrets.
We like
They don't really know how exactly hypnosis works. They really don't. They don't really understand what's exactly happening per se in the mind with the chemicals and that we're able to drop down into the subconscious mind. They just know that it somehow happens. And with working with hypnosis, and the reason why it's different than regular psychotherapy is that you come into my office, we do some cognitive therapy where we talk about the issues, and then I put you into a nice state of relaxation, basically meditation. And I plant or embed, I don't like to use the word plant because sometimes it sounds like I'm, in a scary science movie. And I'm making robots or something. I embed positive suggestions. So if you came into my office and told me you were constantly tired, I would switch that around and say that you're feeling energetic and happier, and you have more time in the day to do the things that you want to do and all of that. So I always turn the negative into a positive and put it back in your brain. So when people walk out of my office, unlike maybe some types of therapy where you sit there and you talk about all your issues and you discover that you had more than you thought and all you've been doing is rehashing everything that makes you upset. After that, I actually put you into that nice state of relaxation and reverse all of that negative and put it back in the positive. And that's why I love doing it. And that's why I got involved, because there's a difference of seeing somebody walk out of your office floating and happy, and not literally floating. I have to make that clear in this sort of discussion. But just a happier person, or feel like they have more hope. And how hypnosis works, and I brought my little diagram so you guys that I made for you. So I do this with all my clients. We're first born with a blank slate, basically. Okay, this is our brain. All right. Then the brain is also.
Why did that say Brian?
It's the brain. Do not critique the handwriting during this lesson, please.
All right, sorry. I'm sorry. I'll be quiet from now on. Move back and sit in my corner.
Well, I actually have these usually printed off, but then I put them in a safe place and now I can't find them. So I'm going to write them out for my clients, but I have them printed off for lectures and stuff. So then we develop the primitive part of the brain. All right. That is where our fight or flight is. All right. That is when we're fight or flight used to be if we ran into the saber-tooth tiger and had to get away. Now it's become my boss. Am I making enough money? All these other fears. Fight or flight is our anxiety. Whether we're going to fight against it and power forward, or we're going to, the flight is when I want to just take the covers and pull them over my head and I don't want to deal with the day. As we continue to develop, we start to make our knowns. These are what the plus and minuses are. I like cake. I don't like broccoli. I like to be hugged. I don't like to be spanked. These become knowns in our childhood. Then about the ages of about 8 to 9, we develop the critical part of the mind. Now, the critical part of the mind has our reasoning, our willpower, which is never there when we need it correctly, and our critical thinking. All right. So what hypnosis does, and this is the difference, is that oftentimes when we're in therapy, we're working with this part of the brain. Okay, the critical part of the mind, our reasoning, correct? But our belief system is all in the subconscious mind. And I'm going to use weight loss as an example because I want to give an example to help better explain this. Someone has the great idea that in the critical mind, I'm going to lose weight and I'm no longer going to eat those cookies or cake that I really like. Well, that beautiful idea drops down into the subconscious mind, okay, oftentimes during sleep. And that, then it fishes. Well, what do I associate cake and all that stuff with? Oh, a big plus. It actually feels good to me. And our body will lead us into doing things that feel good to it. We are wired to, even at our own detriment sometimes, okay? We like to feel good. Sometimes we don't know the difference of wrong or right because we're going for that feel good feeling. Same thing with cigarette smoking. Want to quit, drops down, that idea. I associate cigarette smoking with taking a break, with relaxation, with not eating as much, all these things, even though we know that it possibly could kill us, correct? So what we do in hypnosis, when we get you into that relaxed state, this critical mind, and I drew this wavy line here, becomes less of a barrier, okay? Again, we don't really know how that happens. We don't really know why. You're just in this very relaxed, comfortable state. You're emitting much more dopamine into the body, which is that feel-good drug, that feel-good chemical that we create ourselves that they actually try to mimic drugs after. And we have that feel-good feeling. And so when we plant suggestions into the mind or embed suggestions in the mind of positivity, we can actually change that positive into a negative by creating new associations with the cake or the cookie or the sweets at a deeper level of mind that's going to have a stronger hold on somebody's actions. And that's basically how it works. A lot of therapy deals with right here. Hypnotherapy deals with these pluses and minuses. But this is where it's tricky too, because these are our knowns. And that's what I was talking to you a little bit about, David, about our faith and our belief system gets created a lot of times here, when we're much more of a sponge, when we haven't created that critical mind per se yet. Again, there's all kinds of exceptions to that. However, it becomes a plus or a minus. And so when we need to go back into that place of a known to make us feel better, that can also be a piece of pie, but it can also be our faith. And if we associate that with a plus, we can use that for our own feel good or our own power or whatever it may be, whatever it gives you, that safety. And so that's why I said it's always there. Once it's created, it's always there. And then in hypnosis with neuroplasticity and creating new neural pathways, and we do that with repetition and hypnosis, we also always make an audio. You should always make an audio. If you're going to hypnotherapist, make sure you get an audio, so that once the session is over, I record the hypnotic portion of the session so they have that to go home and listen to over and over and over again. Because how do habits form? By doing the same thing over and over, and the mind is getting some sort of dopamine from it to make you continue to do it. And so that's what we want to do. We want to have you listen to that audio over and over again to create new habits, new positive habits for yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Is it true that to create a new habit or to break a bad habit, 21 days of repetitive, is that like an old wives' tale?
No, we use the number 21 a lot.
Okay.
There is research in saying that 21 is somewhat of the magic number, but I don't always use it. I don't, a lot of times with clients, we'll have a session and I'll see them a week later. And so they're not necessarily going to listen to that same audio for 21 days. They're going to get a new audio, but it's oftentimes still in the realm of what they're working on. The only time we start to change to a different suggestion is after we've already healed or helped desensitize or whatever you needed for that one particular issue. And then we'll move on to another.
Have you ever had, when you're doing your audio recordings and you're doing your hypnosis, have you ever had a session that was disturbing? And if so, if you could talk about it, was it something like, that drew concern? Like if you had somebody who potentially had an attachment or something like that, and it only showed up in therapy, like in hypnotherapy, and then it caused you to step back for a moment and go, what the hell's going on here with this audio type of thing, and maybe caused you not to share that audio recording with that client until you thought better of sharing it?
No, I really haven't had a bad experience with a patient or a client in hypnosis. It always tends to be positive, and actually surprisingly positive. Like I talked about how one person experienced that yellow lab and that helped them calm down. I've had more than once people experience past loved ones, and it's never been a negative. It's always been a positive. So I've never experienced anything where someone went to an extremely dark place and it was an uncomfortable situation. We often, and segueing into regression, which we're talking about, or we will be talking about, when I take people back in regression work, I take them back to view their child self, not to be their child self. Because if they're going to go back and see through their eyes of the child self, they're still going to have the mind of a child who hasn't critically developed. So they may see that experience still through the eyes of a child. It's very interesting when I take them back to something as an adult and they can see their child self, or they can see the experience, but the experience becomes something completely different than how they remembered it as a child. And that is the beauty of the mind loves you. It wants you to feel safe. It wants you to feel good. It wants you to survive. So oftentimes when you get into that hypnotic zone, as we say, the mind will bring you things on its own to help you heal. If it feels like you're capable or not capable or able to do so. There's a reason why people suppress memories. The brain is trying to protect that person from something it doesn't believe it can handle. And I don't like to open up that jar of worms as a child. I can go back somewhat, bringing the person as an adult, but I'll never have them go back and see through the eyes of a child or, exactly that self. I like them to go back as observers, because it's very interesting. And just, we know in life, when you can view something objectively compared to subjectively, how you can get a better understanding of it.
Absolutely.
So I have a question,
course.
specifically about that scenario that you just chose, or that you just explained about. So when you're going through a regression therapy, and say, take the example you just said, that somebody's going back to view their childhood, what if, like, how do you make sure that they don't see it through their eyes as a child, and they do in fact see it like as a removed bystander?
Because I take them, and it's a good question, I take them from the very down into hypnosis from the very beginning, because there's steps that you take to have them sort of go back to that time period. And I have them witness those steps almost like a timeline, as an observer. So I always start them out right from seeing from that perception. And I haven't had any situation where someone said, well, I all of a sudden became the child again. When I introduce that to them in their adult form and have them revisit it as an adult, they don't tend to revert back to childhood. They continue to stay as an adult and see it that way.
Yeah, because I was thinking, I'm like, what if that did happen, and then it became like a traumatic experience for that person, like by no fault of anybody, that's just where their mind took them, you know? Mm-hmm. But yeah, okay, that's interesting.
I won't do regression work if it's something where someone says, I know I have suppressed memory and I really want to discover what it was, when it has to do with, if it has to do with something like losing a precious doll and you can't remember where you place it or something like that. If it has to do with emotion and trauma, I don't take them back there to experience that, because I am not going to battle with the mind when the mind chose to forget it.
So
I don't, and ethically, it's not, the hypnotherapists are asked not to do that, really, because they used to use that in court cases, and then they discovered that couldn't be a reliable witness, because the mind, where there are gaps, it will take from different memories, it will take from television shows, it will fill in those gaps. And so a memory isn't always accurate. And even in hypnosis, someone can describe something that they believe that happened, but we have no way to know if it really happened.
So what exactly, for anybody who has never either heard the term or knows really what it is, what exactly is regression therapy, and how is it best? I mean, what do most people use it for?
So I'm going to talk about, because we talked about me coming on the show for past life regression therapy, which is totally different than just regular regression therapy. Past life is where you take, obviously the person would have to be open to the idea of believing in reincarnation, that we have had past lives. And you would take them just as you would in a regular hypnosis sort of session, where you bring them in, you'd ask them what answers they're trying to find out. Why do they want to visit their past life? A lot of times people come in because they have an ailment that the doctors can't diagnose, or they have some sort of fear or phobia that they don't know where it stems from, or some sort of emotional issue where, again, they don't know exactly where it stems from, and they just want to explore where that could possibly be coming from. And so in a past life regression, we'll put you into hypnosis and really take you back in the years. Past life regression is meant to bring the conscious into the subconscious in a therapeutic sort of healing way. And there's 5 different levels of once you go into hypnosis, of how deep you go for past life regression. The first level, someone can maybe describe that. And another thing to point out is that in hypnosis, your senses are heightened in your imagination as well. Sense of smell, sound, these are all part of the imagination. That's why we can possibly think of our favorite food and our mouth starts to salivate, because our body is actually now preparing to digest it. And that was just a thought. So, I mean, that just proves in its simplest form how powerful the mind is. You're just thinking about that, and your body's now, biologics all preparing for it. And so when you're in the stage 1, level 1, you maybe feel relaxed, but you're not really seeing anything. You're not really necessarily feeling anything. And that would tell the hypnotherapist to bring the person even deeper. We try to go really deep in past life regression. When I say deep, I mean very, very relaxed. And there's all sorts of techniques to bring you to that level, all safe. And then we want to get you to level 5 is the best, but 2 or 3, you might see flashes. Some people see colors. Some people just hear things. Some people just feel things. It's not necessarily like you're walking into a movie and you're seeing this past life projected in front of you. Sometimes it's just a feeling, but I've had, colleagues of mine where people just had feelings, but they were able to tell a whole story just from those feelings. And that's about 2 to 3, level 2 to 3. 4 and 5 is when it is like you're stepping into it, like you are seeing that life as a movie playing out, and you can smell things and hear things. And you actually at level 5, you become that person that you might have once been. And it's pretty remarkable because now I'm on the fence about whether I fully believe it or not. However, I am more so fascinated with it and how it has helped people. There are people that have spoken different languages. I've witnessed it a few times. You also have to ask yourself, you hear so many stories of young children about to the age of 5 who are prodigies in music and are writing or able to memorize something or say that I've been here before, or be able to talk about places that they've seen that they've never been. It's very interesting. And that does put the question out there of how do they know that much? I remember when I was a child, I was really just fascinated by the Native American culture. And I even taught myself at 8 years old, Native American Sign Language. But even at that time when I was doing it, Plains Native American Sign Language. So even at that time, there was a familiarness about it. And I would use all my allowance money and buy these huge books on Native American history. And my parents are like, where's all this coming from? I mean, it's not really in our heritage, or we're Irish. And so what is that? Why is that? And that is something that people who do fully believe in past life regression think that's because of the different lives that we've led. And we're still young enough to have the memories and stuff still come up for us. And so it's a very, very interesting topic. It's helped many clients, like I said, with ailments such as somebody may come in for a hurt neck, or their neck is always hurting, and we bring them back in past life regression. They found out they were hung. And then when they come out of that regression, they no longer have a neck that hurts anymore. It's very interesting. Now, is that a belief system that they've now discovered the source so they can let it go, and it really has nothing to do with the past life? Again, it's still fascinating to me. So that is the whole process of taking. And the thing is, too, is that I was doing past life regression when I was 9 years old and didn't even know what I was doing. I was, slumber parties, massaging the temples of 8-year-old girls and telling them to go back in the clouds and remember what they once were. I didn't know what I was doing, but they would tell me stories, and I would, it was always so fun. And so it's always interesting to me and kind of spooky in a way that I did turn out. I mean, I wasn't planning on, when I discovered hypnotherapy, I didn't know that was a part of it. And I'm like, I've already been doing this. So it's pretty interesting how it led me here in my life. But it is for many hypnotherapists, they think it's a very healing modality as a therapeutic tool.
So I'm going to put you on the spot. As an 8-year-old doing Native American Plains Sign Language, how do you explain that away, that was not something that happened to you in a previous life?
I can't. And that's what I didn't even really think about. I always knew, I was aware of how much I was enthralled with that culture, and always sort of mesmerized and talk about being drawn to something, completely drawn to it. And I didn't question it until I grew older and learned about more past life, because remember, I was brought up in a house of faith and reincarnation wasn't discussed. And so once I learned about that, I thought, oh, that is really interesting. I wonder if that had something to do with it, because it was, sort of, my parents were very encouraging of it, but it did surprise them that I was spending all my allowance money on books of history when, some girls were buying Barbies. I did buy those too, though. I will admit that. But so yeah, it's a very fascinating type of therapy, and what I have witnessed about it has been oftentimes I haven't witnessed anything negative, but again, I don't conduct the sessions myself.
Have you ever had it done to you?
Yeah.
Like and what
Yeah.
did you
Well,
find?
that is also why I got into it, because actually, again, before I knew anything about this, when I was, I think, 15 years old, I had a very realistic dream where I was walking on a beach, and all of a sudden it was, kind of rocky. It wasn't exactly a sand beach. It had mountains behind me that were rocks and shrubbery. And I was walking on the beach, and the ground started to rumble and everything started to shake. And my clothes all of a sudden changed to a white kind of Grecian gown. And columns rose up behind me like some sort of Acropolis or, something from Greece. And then I started falling on my knees and praising the ocean. And I kept saying something, Aegean. And that's all I could remember from the dream. And I told my parents about it at our family dinner. And they said, Aegean, that's the sea in Aegean. That's the sea in Greece. Is that what you said? And I said, yes, that's what I was saying. And so that was really interesting, because did I pick that up somewhere in geography class? I was horrible in geography. So maybe that was the one thing I remembered. And I didn't know that I remembered it. However, that was such an interesting dream for me that when I spoke to somebody who did past life regression, they really wanted to work with me with that, but they ended up inviting my friends as well to be put under. And I'm not good in group situations to be put under. I'm more listening to what other people are doing. It's hard for me to go into that state. I will say, though, during that time where they put us, all of my friends and I, under, one of my girlfriends, who was the meekest and the quietest of all of us, came out talking completely differently under hypnosis or past life regression. She was royalty, a male, and she took on a completely different demeanor. She was mean. She never talked like this, demanding, putting people down. It was very interesting. Described how they carried her in on sort of a bed. So it sounded almost kind of Egyptian-er, and she described herself as being royalty. And so that was really fascinating to me. And then I actually also went on my own little pilgrimage to Greece, because I was still sort of confused about that dream and if maybe I would recognize something. And nothing really spoke to me when I was there, and I was a bit disappointed. However, and you can look into this however you want to, when I did get my pictures back from the Acropolis that I visited, every single picture taken there, no matter what angle, no matter where I was, the sun was blocked out by a blue blob with a black dot in the middle. And that didn't happen anywhere else on the trip. We took a lot of pictures in the sunshine. We took pictures at other places that day. That didn't happen anywhere else except at the Acropolis. And if you know anything about Greek faith or mythology, that symbolizes the evil eye, which is actually supposed to be a form of luck, or to scare off evil. But I thought that was a strange sort of coincidence that I went there, and that ended up happening. I don't know what it means. I didn't have any memories come back to me or anything like that. However, I just thought that was really interesting. So that was sort of my own experience and why I became more interested in it.
Did you happen to share your girlfriend's experience with her after the session?
Oh, yeah.
And what was her reaction to that? Because that is amazing that you would have somebody meet like that. To me, that means something legitimately is going on. Like, that's the way I read what you just said. Like, there is no way I won't say no way, right? Because I'm not 100% kind of guy. Mike knows that. I'm 99.9%. He can roll his eyes all he wants. I'm 99.9% at times, but for your friend who's the meekest of the group to go through a hypnotherapy session and all of a sudden become a completely different individual, right?
That's a level 5.
That just doesn't happen, right? That just doesn't happen. You know, we just don't become other people unless we're possessed, potentially, right? To other people. So what was her take? And when you shared that with her, what was her take on that?
She didn't remember any of it. And
did she think you were lying? Did she
No.
think you guys were full of shit? Like you're like, oh, you were doing this and this, and she's like, that's not me. I wasn't doing that, you know?
She wasn't so much in denial. I think it was more embarrassment.
Okay.
I think there's something about, it's almost like other people are listening into your private moments or something, where you take on this whole other entity or this whole other person or persona, and everybody's listening and you don't even know what you said. So that can be a little bit frightening. And she was just seemed more confused and kind of shy about it. A lot of giggles and I don't know, you know, one of those. Right. And I did have another friend in that same session going as well, and she described this whole story of how she was a little girl and fell down a flight of stairs in the South, and she lived on a plantation. I mean, it was amazing. However, that friend's demeanor didn't change as much, and she also has a very high imagination. So I wasn't, you know, I'm still very critical too about, you know, if I'm gonna, was she doing this to put on a show or was she doing this to? But my other friend, she does not like to be the center of attention. She stands back and watches. So the fact that she came out with this whole story, this different voice, this roughness about her, and sort of a meanness was really out of character.
So where does that take you moving forward as a professional? How do you rationalize that in your kind of medical sense now, like your medical background? Where does that fall into play for you as an individual?
You know, it's hard. It's difficult because I'm not necessarily a believer, but I'm not necessarily a disbeliever. I have witnessed things that, you know, give evidence to supporting this. However, it's still not something that's scientifically proven. And so I don't put my stamp of approval on it or not. However, I do, like I said, I see it as a healing tool. And if someone wants to use this type of technique for therapy to help heal or discover something, to put something to rest or to better themselves, and they want to come to me for that help, I'm not going to stand in the way of that. And the more research I also do, and we can get on a big topic, talk about that on another show, of near-death experiences. I wrote my paper on that for Parasite because I actually had a nephew or cousin who had one at 3 years old. I find that extremely fascinating as well.
I do too. So we'll have you back on for that show because I've got a friend of mine that died in a motorcycle accident.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that would be it. And I've been wanting to do a near-death experience show for a long time. So
in my paper, I wrote about what's scientifically going on in the mind. And then I also wrote about what could be going on spiritually. So I get both sides to the story. Both are amazing that the brain's doing this. However, the more I've done research and studied and heard people's testimonies after a near-death experience, the more it leads me to believe that is more of a possibility that perhaps past lives could possibly exist. However, again, I can't say yay or nay. But if it helps my client, I'm very happy to help. And going into, we wanted to talk about alien abductions too, about how that.
Yeah, I mean, how exactly does regression therapy help with alien abduction cases?
So, and talking about sleep paralysis, they also believe that maybe sleep paralysis has to play into as well abduction experiences. And there is a hypnotherapist, and I don't have her name with me right now, but I can find it for you if you'd like, who actually, and I don't know if she's still doing it because this was a while ago, but she especially works with people who have had, I believe they've had a encounter or been abducted or whatever it may be that they felt like they experienced. But just like we work with the memory and hypnosis, we'll help somebody find their keys, their wedding ring, and it's really interesting how you can bring them back to that spot and they'll remember, oh, I put it in that blazer, that jacket, and it's up hanging in my closet. Oh my gosh, now I remember. All of our memories are still there. They're even in the womb. There are memories from the womb. We're just not consciously able to tap into them. Left hemisphere, the logical part of the brain, is already starting to record stuff even in the womb. So that being said, what else can be recorded from other times? But with abduction type of therapy, it's just like with regular regression would help somebody find their keys. You take them back to that time period. You have them experience and using all their senses, what they could smell, see, taste, feel around them. You try to put them back exact. It's like going over a crime scene or something where you want to reenact the whole thing and then allow them to experience what they see. But again, I personally take them back as an observer, not an actual person who's experiencing it. Because it can be somewhat traumatic. And if it was something traumatic and the brain decided to cover that up a little bit because for safety reasons, then I again don't want to uncover that. That's messing with a whole different type of I think emotional stability that I don't want to touch on. However, I will keep them back as an observer.
Yvonne Smith by chance? Yvonne Smith?
That actually does sound familiar. Does she have dark hair?
Yeah. I typed that in and yeah, she's got like black hair and
yeah.
She's hypnotherapist certified by the Hypnosis Motivation Institute. First and only college of hypnosis in the United States to achieve national accreditation.
That's where I
with alien abductees since 1990.
That's where I actually graduated from as well, and that's why I know about her.
Okay.
She actually held some classes, but then the director of the school really didn't want to dabble into that other realm per se. So she no longer did lectures at our school anymore.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
Because you got to stay open-minded, don't you?
Yes, and they are very open-minded. We it's funny because we call HMI the Hogwarts School of Magic because you are learning so many amazing new things about the brain. I learned more about the brain in my education for hypnosis than I did in my 4 years of becoming a graduate in psychology. However, when you want it to be taken seriously, that is going into more of a different type of realm than just what we know scientifically and physiologically about the brain. That's still a kind of a
gray area that everybody runs away from if you want to save your accreditation.
Exactly. And if we always tease that hypnotherapists were always people's last resorts anyways. Usually they've seen therapist upon therapist and it's not working. So they're like, might as well give this a try. And they come and see us. And so, because it's being more accepted into our type of medical world. However, it's still not fully accepted yet. And you don't want to raise any more doubts or thinking it's magic or foolery or anything like that. And if you bring abductions into it and make that a part of the training, really, it can lose a bit of its credibility. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. And they are trying to stay with, not all schools, but HMI is trying to stay away from that.
So, since we are almost out of time, there was a question that popped in my head a while ago during this hour, and I'm curious as to what your answer is. And so, when you were talking about when you would use hypnotherapy on people that, even though you wouldn't lead them anywhere, all of a sudden, like a loved one would come through, or their past aunt would come through, and you're like, what happened there? Have you ever tried, and if you haven't, would you ever try putting like an investigator during an investigation into a trance to see if something at that location would come through?
I actually, at any event that I do take my group into, I take them into a quick little hypnosis session before we go into an investigation. I don't force them. Those who want to partake can partake. And I don't do, it's a lighter version of a hypnosis session because I don't take them full. I don't do the countdown. I don't bring them fully down. But I will take them to a place where I have them focus on each one of their senses. So their sense of smell is heightened, eyesight, hearing. We tap into all of that, even the third eye, which is intuition. And so I tap into that before we go on an investigation so people can possibly make themselves more accessible or make their own body a tool for the investigation in a safe way. I still bring them up out of hypnosis, but I still tap into them and give those suggestions. And so I do actually take people into hypnosis before I take them onto investigation. And Mustafa and I from Ghost Hunters he wanted me to do a full session with him in a room that he felt like the entity there was trying to talk to him or talk through him. And unfortunately, we ran out of time and we weren't able to do that. And I haven't actually taken I wouldn't take somebody who came to an event to be a part of the event. I would only take an investigator into a full hypnotic trance, and if that's what they wanted. But I have yet to do it, but I would do it.
So, does anybody have?
I'll sign up for that.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sure, you will.
Yeah, yeah. I would sign up for that because I mean, there's some dangers to be involved there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not it's not dangerous, but there are some potential things that could be mentally dangerous. So, but I would sign up for that. I would sign up for going into it, like under hypnosis at a haunted location to open my mind. I find it interesting that you want to amplify all the senses when I would think you would want to delineate one of the senses in order for the other senses to naturally expand, right? Because isn't that the whole like Estes method and things like that, where like you get rid of your eyesight, so your sense of smell, your sense of hearing, things like that become heightened just because you've lost a sense. So,
however,
I'm open for whatever. I have experienced a ton of stuff. I'm up for whatever. So,
when the reason why I take you through all the senses, because at that time we don't know how the entity is going to try. If there is an entity there, it's going to try to connect with you. So if it's visually, we knew exactly, without a doubt, how it was going to try to communicate.
Right.
Then we totally understand what you're saying. However, because we don't, we have to be prepared for all, basically. Right.
So if you knew it was going to be auditory, you could get rid of your eyesight and just rely on the fact that your amplification of auditory is going to happen. And that would benefit the situation at that moment in time.
Yeah. If I was going into an Estes method, like you said, sure, I'd put myself into hypnosis to do the Estes method. However, if it was just a general and we were going in to do an investigation, I don't want to sort of numb something more and heighten something else. And even if it is usually auditory, the evidence is auditory, we don't know how these spirits actually manifest, and how they, one person can hear something and one person can see something.
Right.
Why that happens, we still don't know.
Right.
Sometimes they see the same thing and it's different to each
Right.
person. Again, we don't know how that works. So if we can be able to go in fully prepared, that's the way I but in a safe way. And I do also talk about protected by your own positive energy and all of that. So people can go in also feeling safe, and that they're not completely now like this blank slate to the paranormal realm, and then all these spirits will be flying at them from every angle. I make sure there's a feeling of comfort with it. And it really is just, I take the more of a guided imagery meditation than dropping them down into a deep hypnotic sort of trance or state.
Does anybody have any more questions for Kristen before we head out?
Well, I've got like 25, but we're done for tonight. So, I'll save them for the NDE show.
Okay.
Lauren, how about you?
I'm just fascinated by the whole topic and trying to take all this in, because
I know it's long.
Yeah, and I know because we had like, when Cena was on like a while ago on our team live stream, she like briefly kind of gave us a look into like our past lives, what she was sensing. But I always thought, I'm like, okay, that'd be really interesting to like do it myself, and like go back. But the opportunity has never presented itself. But I'd be interested in it. But I guess what you said, because you said like the person has to be open to the idea of past lives, correct? Mm-hmm. I guess I'm still trying to figure out where I stand with that in myself.
Mm-hmm. But it's okay to be skeptical. It's okay. You can still have an amazing experience going in. I mean, most people come in for hypnosis having some doubt, and rightfully they should. They're trying something new. We're always going to have a bit of doubt. So it's okay if you're skeptical going in. You just can't fully be like, I don't believe in this at all, but let's give it a go. There has to be some sort of openness to it, or you can shut your whole experience down before it even started.
Yeah. So I guess I'm kind of on the same page as Dave. I have like a million more questions, but we've already been on here for 2 hours, so I don't want to take up any more time of everybody else's night.
That's what we're here for.
Maybe we can get a list, and then we put together a list, and then I'll come back on and we'll just go down a list of questions. We can get them all rolled out there.
I'm going to say I had a Reiki session where I saw myself as a young Native American boy running through a field with tall grass, where I could feel the tips of the grass, and I could see the mountain, and I could see the ice flow coming down, and I could see it was springtime, and I could see the crystal blue water. And I looked over to my left, and my grandma was running next to me, screaming something, but I couldn't see it. And I don't know what she was screaming, but she was screaming like scared. And then and then all the sound finally came in, and it was the thunder of horses coming.
Oh, interesting.
And then all of my whole, all of the warriors and the chieftains were gone fighting, and they came and killed everybody, including me and my grandma that was running, from our Native American settlement.
Was this if it was a Reiki session, were you there to help heal any ailments in the body, or was that the direction you were going, or
that was the original thing, was that she was trying to kind of realign my chakra, I guess, like try to realign my center point. And because I had been a little scattered, and I had just come from a very negative investigation. So she offered and said, I can help you with that. I can help you realign and get rid of this like negative cloud that's on you, right? There wasn't an attachment. It wasn't a oppression. It wasn't anything like that. But it was this negative cloud that was hanging around me, so to speak. And she said, I can focus you down and get rid of that negative cloud. And when she did, everything went perfectly fine. I saw the cloud dissipate. Everything was going great. And then all of a sudden I hear drum beating and I see myself, you know, not scared. I wasn't scared. I was just running with my fingertips. You know what I mean? And they were just hitting the tops of the grass tops, you know, like that, those fuzzy grass tops.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Like we know what those are. Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm just, my fingertips are hitting those, and it's such a beautiful day. The sun's shining. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's like, this is a great day to be alive times a million. That's what it felt like, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then my grandma showed up next to my left, and she was running with me. And I thought, well, I'm just out here just like, and I wasn't really even running. I was just kind of rapidly walking through, feeling my fingertips on the grass box. And then she was screaming, and I couldn't hear her for a long time. And then finally I heard her. And then when I looked behind me, all I heard was the thunder of horses coming.
Mm-hmm.
And we were all cut down by sabers,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so to say that I don't believe in past life experiences, I'd be an ass to say I don't believe in them.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest with you, that moment was so real. I was there.
Yeah.
When I told that story to my daughters, I have 3 daughters. When I told my story to my daughters, I cried like a baby.
Mm-hmm.
It was that emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I had tears just streaming down my face, and I couldn't even get the story out. And they were like, "Dad, what is wrong?" And I'm like, "There's nothing wrong. I just need to share this with you."
Mm-hmm.
But it took me so long to share that with them.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was amazing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
and the fact that you had such an emotional attachment to it,
it was hugely emotional.
to the point where you were physically,
I was weeping.
Yeah.
I was openly weeping uncontrollably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of those things where, how do you explain that?
Right.
Where did it come from? Why would that make you so emotional unless you were possibly actually connected
there.
To that?
Right.
Yeah.
Unless I was there, right, running in that field.
Mm-hmm.
And I had passed away, and so had my grandmother and the other people that were running behind us that were all women and children.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, I don't know. I can't dismiss that. I never will dismiss that.
Mm-hmm.
Something happened. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Something happened in some sort of past life. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, if we had more time, I would start to talk to you about that, but we'll have to do, maybe we'll email, because I have some questions.
I'll email it.
of my own about that, but I'm not going to use the rest of the time for your own session, David.
That's fine. That's fine.
Although I am really tempted to do so, but I know everybody has things to do tonight. So,
all right. But Kristen, thank you for coming on.
Of course, always,
absolutely. And then obviously we have about another 3 shows now to schedule with you. So
it always seems to happen every time we get on these discussions. We can just go and go and go.
Yes, we can. Which means next time it'll be the full show.
Full, yes.
Absolutely.
I'll better plan.
I'll try to give you more than 4 days notice.
Okay.
So
that'll help too.
All right. Well, that does it for us here tonight. We'll be back next week with another brand new episode. Everybody stay healthy, stay safe. We want to see you back here.